your chance.
To dive into the heart of manufacturing.
This is your chance.
To hear about company culture and people making an impact in the industry.
This is your chance.
To join the conversation with host Jim Mayer in the Creators Lounge.
The Creators Lounge welcomes LillyWorks and Protected Flow Manufacturing.
Hello and welcome back to the Creators Lounge. I'm here with Mark Lilly from Protected Flow Manufacturing. I'm going to refer to this as PFM for the rest of our conversation.
That's
Is
great.
That okay
PFM or LillyWorks or whatever. Maybe,
okay.
Whatever
because
works.
I don't want to step in it with you, but PFM is just a lot
perfect.
easier for me to say.
It sure is. Yeah.
So, Mark, as I kick off all of my shows, all of my interviews, I love to hear people's stories. So give us a quick background on your entrance into the industry here.
Sure. So it all started with my dad, actually, who started Profit Key, which was a custom manufacturing ERP way back in the 80s. And he also started visual manufacturing in 1991, 92.
That's
now,
right.
Infor Visual, now owned by Infor. And both of those software tools still have really good finite capacity scheduling embedded in them, much like many ERPs today.
Absolutely.
But what we found was that 8-9 times out of 10, when we asked our customers how they were actually managing production in the shop, was spreadsheets, right? And I find the same thing this week here at IMTS. I find it at every trade show. When folks come up to our booth and they see we do scheduling, I ask them, and regardless of what ERP they're using, 9 times out of 10, how are you managing production? Spreadsheets.
Absolutely.
So we came up with a different approach, and that's so I got started with Visual, actually.
Okay.
I was with Hewlett Packard way back when, and then came and joined my dad with Visual and learned how to implement and sell Visual and all the scheduling as well. So I saw it as well moving on. Now, so the same team of folks who actually, now my dad has passed away a couple of years ago, but the team of folks who actually created and wrote Visual, designed and literally coded it underneath my dad, are the folks who have designed and coded this tool as well.
That's pretty amazing. And in this world of automation, for companies to still be using Excel files for scheduling is pretty astronomical to me, right?
It is.
And so part of your brand voice is that, and I'm not quoting here, but it's similar to the brand voice of this year's IMTS theme, which is inspiring the extraordinary, right? And that's what you aim to do. So tell us a little bit about that brand voice, that designation that you have chosen.
Sure. So we're really, want to hear from people who are struggling with scheduling, right? Yeah. It's those folks who they've tried the scheduling in their ERP or outside tools. They're on spreadsheets now. They're spending a tremendous amount of time on spreadsheets. The production folks are managing the spreadsheets, right? Yeah. That's what we find oftentimes is the folks who would rather be spending their time doing production,
creating value,
are actually doing all this admin work just to figure out what they need to do today or this week, and as a result have very little visibility of what's going to happen beyond that and things. Sure. And that's critical as well. And one of the key terms is visibility, right? When we don't even need to market to it because our clients and our folks who are interested in improving the way they manage production are coming to us asking for, Mark, we need better visibility. Yeah. And it's visibility across the board. It's visibility here and now of what job should I be working on now, right? Do I have the materials to do it? Right. And then, of course, the $30,000 question, right, is the future-looking sales or customer service, or oftentimes production is being asked this, when is my customer going to be able to get that order?
Absolutely. Right? So what specific pain points do you aim to solve with PFM?
Yep. So it's the indicators, the highest level indicator, of course, is on-time delivery we see. Okay. Or, some folks understand that their throughput, right there, the financial performance of their company isn't where it could be or should be. And some folks, especially who've been in manufacturing a while, just understand that inherently. Like some things we should be performing better, but I'm not sure why or what actually to target.
Yeah.
So that's a good one. More specifically, it's kind of some of the issues I already mentioned. You know, visibility, wanting to improve visibility, wanting to be able to answer those. One of the key factors is understanding what your constraint is. Right. Oftentimes people feel they know what it is, or they can visually see what their constraint is today, right?
Yeah.
Where's the most pile of work in process? What department is it piling up in? But when you really look at how production is happening, and when we implement this approach that we utilize to support the software supports, is you often see a fairly dramatic reduction in work in process. And what you thought was your bottleneck actually is something else.
Hold that thought. We've got to run to a sponsored break, but I do want to come back to how manufacturers can maximize their production right after the sponsored break. So we'll be right back with you.
You are watching The Creators Lounge. Gain insights as our hosts talk to expert guests about key industry topics. Come see the action live on the trade show floor. Visit booth 338 600. See you at The Creators Lounge.
Welcome back to the Creators Lounge. I'm here with Mark Lilly from Protected Flow Manufacturing. Mark, before we took a quick break there, you were starting to talk about how manufacturers can really maximize their production using this software. Let's dive back into that and let's talk about how they can find that attainable due date, because I think that's a lot of what I see out there is those due dates are fluctuating up and down.
Right.
Talk to us more about that.
So so our software helps implement an approach we call the dynamic production method.
Okay.
And the method starts with making sure that you're representing how material actually flows through production. And that's one of the challenges, frankly, in most ERP tools. And again, for example, subassemblies. Many ERPs need you to have, separate work orders for every level. Well, what if you're actually making the subassemblies specifically for and in the same lot quantity for the parent, right? So really it could stay in WIP. It's kind of a connection. Yep. And what if there are subs on subs? What if you do divergence? What if on a laser cutting tool, you're actually producing 7 different parts? And those parts may be going down their own value stream. They may be coming back together later in the project or work. Sure. So you want to be able to represent that. So that's the starting point. From that starting point, we then create what we call an execution plan for every work order. And the execution plan, think of your lead time. Your lead time consists of the estimated time for the series of operations it needs to go through, right?
Yep.
And then kind of this additional time that what we call a buffer. So when you look at an execution plan, the lead time would be the date at the end, a buffer, and then the work that needs to be done. Yeah. From that execution plan, you can see real-time status, where that work order is. It's also going to drive priorities. So one of the things in this method is, while most scheduling tools utilize a due date priority, seems to make perfect sense, very important piece of information. Yeah. But the problem is, especially in a high mix environment, you're going to have jobs that are due weeks from now, say 10 weeks from now, that's more in danger of being late if you don't get started on it today than a job that's due even a week or 2 from now.
Absolutely.
So we have a priority mechanism that makes that very, very clear, regardless of the due date, in fact, which job should I be working on in this department right now?
So it will tell each department what is the highest priority based on their duties. It's not just necessarily the machining time that's out there. It can also talk through other departments. How soon does this need to go through quality and all those things?
Exactly. And is it ready, which is key too. So in other words, in my department, I can see everything that is here now or will be coming through, or I can just see those items for which I have material right now, and material may need, it's been issued out of inventory. It could mean simply that the previous operations reported some complete.
Wow.
Now, in terms of the future-looking view, so this is our big differentiator, is where every other scheduling tool tries to create and does create this big plan, right? The scheduling program runs, and you've got your big plan, the big Gantt chart, and then you bring those priorities out into production. Well, that's static, right? And it's also not representative of how production is actually working. It was generated by a capacity loading algorithm, not the way you actually produce in the shop. So when folks look at the priorities, they kind of go, that looks a lot different than what we talked about in this production meeting this morning.
Right.
So what we're doing is instead focusing first and very heavily on executing in the best way possible to optimize what you want to typically it's on-time delivery, but it could be revenue. It could be your most important customer. Those types of things.
Taking that concept of, zeroing in on that most important metric, whatever it may be, what advice do you have for manufacturers that may not have PFM right now? I know your advice is to get PFM, but outside of that, what's your advice to them?
Sure. Well, there are three main principles that DPM or the dynamic production method is based on. And you can certainly, it can be a little tricky to implement these in isolation, and PFM helps you implement them all together, which is important. But one of them is to control how much work you're sending out into WIP.
Got it.
Oftentimes, folks, they don't know the right time to start jobs, and as a result, you want to start things, if I were a production manager, you don't want to start things too late. So you start things maybe early, maybe really early. So now you have excessive work out, the work that doesn't necessarily need to be out there right now. And that's what folks don't realize. That's slowing things down. That's clogging WIP. That's confusing the true priorities out in production. So it's important to control that. Once it is controlled, then the second big principle is this priority method. You want to make sure that whatever is out there, you have the right objective criteria upon which to have the production folks decide, really, which job should they be working on next.
Absolutely. And with that, we're going to take our second sponsored break. We will be right back with Mark Lilly right after this message. Welcome back to the Creators Lounge. I'm here with Mark Lilly from Protected Flow Manufacturing. Mark, before we went to that last break, you started to allude to some case studies. I want to hear some success stories, some case studies of manufacturers that have implemented this software, this solution, and what has it done for them?
Sure. So there's the general results that folks see is, as we talked about in the last segment, is an initial reduction in WIP.
Right.
That, with a prioritization method, really helps improve, literally speed, the flow of material through production. And that has all sorts of benefits, right? Your lead times go down, your on-time delivery goes up, your WIP is down, which is a financial benefit, clearly.
Absolutely.
So all sorts of benefits to that. And that's typically, if you read our case studies on our website, that's typically what you'll see. Machine Shop, Modern Machine Shop, actually, Matt Danford himself actually went to one of our customers several years ago and did an article. It's still out on the web. Be happy to provide it to anyone. And it talks about a company, Machine Shop, around 40 employees, implementing it. And what's interesting is they went through what we call phase one. So they had all, big screen TVs in each department with the priorities set up and everything. And they called us back about 6 weeks later and said, we don't really see any improvements. So we said, well, let's figure out why. We went in and walked through and realized the production folks hadn't been adequately trained or bought into the method yet. So they were still working off their spreadsheets.
Sure.
So we did kind of a regrouping, and once the team got on board, in fact, got them bought in, we actually, then the results came. I went to, about 6 months later, I went to a Topshop conference in Cincinnati and had the owners up speaking with me. Well, during our presentation, one of the production folks stood up in the audience and he said, look, at 40 employee company, there are 7 of us here from production at this 3-day show. There's no way that would ever have happened without PFM, because now everybody knows what they need to be working on.
That's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I like that a lot. And so this is more than just a software. You're also helping provide some change management techniques inside these shops that may not be set up to culturally take these.
Absolutely. And frankly, that's one of the first things we look for right up front in the sales cycle. If folks, if we see, and even internally folks realize that there are a couple people that just aren't going to change their ways, then we'll move on.
Not worth your time.
Right.
So one of the great things about IMTS is you get to see really cool new ideas.
Yep.
What's new on the innovation scale for PFM and LillyWorks?
Yeah, thanks for asking. One of the most more recent things we introduced just a few months ago was what we call our outside service workstation. So much like I've been referring to internal work center priorities, now we have the same view for outside services. So folks, because there's a lot of variability there, right? What needs to go out? When does it need? When should it go out? When has it gone out? When is it coming back? Is it back? How many are back? And all the management around that. So again, providing visibility in spades to the outside service processes.
Because then you're able to hold your vendors accountable.
That's it.
Wow, that's amazing, Mark.
That's it.
I love it. What else is new? Or is that the big new development?
Since our inception, we've had the simulator, what we call. So the simulator shows you what your future is going to look like by simulating you executing your priorities in the future. So you can always see, and you can take a quote or a proposed order and run it through the simulator. If you've got 500 or 1,000 work orders, though, the simulator is going to take an hour or two. That's just it. You can run it during the day, but it's going to take some time. Where folks want an instant answer, we can provide that now with what we call CTP, capable to promise functionality, where you can take a quote or even a series of sales lines, send them over, and automatically run what we call a CTP run. That just looks at available capacity from the previous simulation run. So without touching anything else, it's going to give you an answer in seconds as to when you could get that out to your customer.
I love it, Mark. I wish we could sit here and chat all day, but that's our time that we had available. So thank you so much for joining me in the Creators Lounge today. Look forward to having more conversation. Folks, if you have time, please go down and see Mark. You're over in the...
near the software, 135-802.
You got it.
Serves.
So thanks for joining us on the Creators Lounge, Mark. Have a great day.